Hello everyone. I wish you a good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Welcome to the spUN Virtual Debates 2024 tournament for 18th May 2024 at 7:45 CDT. We ask our judge, moderator, and assistant to remain in this room after the debate. Judge Shreya will be giving us feedback and announcing the winner at end of the debate. I am moderator and facilitator for 2024 spUN tournament room, and my name is B.U. Naveen Raj. And Martin will be assisting me. I would like to read the following statement to you. The winning team is chosen based on the skill and effort, not on any preset NSS position. NSS clearly believes that humanity should continue to explore, develop, and settle space. However, NSS also believes an open, honest debate will facilitate the goal. It is important that space advocates understand and be able to express the anti-space case. No statement by any debater or coach is an official position of NSS. Here is a word on points of information or POI offered by the opposition. Debaters must type and send the concise POI in Zoom chat. The moderator or assistant will approve and present the POI. The speaker debater has the opportunity to accept it or not. There's no further discussion about POI's answer. The POIs given, at least 2 POIs should be accepted by the speaker if it's offered. Let's meet our debaters. The proposition team is held by Team Cadmium. All team names in University 2024 spUN tournament carry the name of one of the elements found in photovoltaic cell. The cell will be important player in 24-hour transmission of space-based solar energy to Earth and subject to our debate. The proposition position is held by Team Cadmium. The team is coached by Alexander Dolce. Team Cadmium, please give us your name and the country you're representing.
Good day, everybody. My name is King Kumire. I come from Zimbabwe. We are supporting the proposition. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Kelly. I represent the United States of America, and we're so proud to affirm the resolution.
Good day, everyone. I am Pranav Gapat. I am from India. We are supporting the proposition.
Next, we'll hear from Team Silicon. The team is coached by Hayden Yulin. Opposition debaters, please give us your name and the country you're representing.
Hello, my name is Bushra Azize. I'm presenting Syria from Silicon team.
Hello, everyone. I am opposition speaker 1. I'm from Team Silicon. And I'm Vishnu KP. I'm representing India.
Hello everyone, my name is Vipasha. I am from India. I am speaker 3 from Team Silicon.
Okay. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand in your participant icon on your screen. Please mute your mic unless you're speaking, and only presenting team and judge should turn on their video unless directed by the moderator. Our debating format today follows the same as the previous one during the practice debate tournament. So let's get started. We'll hear from first speaker of Team Cadmium, representing affirmative team. So let's go through the 2024 resolution before getting started. The international community must establish regulation for space-based solar power to mitigate potential hazard. Team Cadmium, your first speaker may begin your proposition intro. You have about 8 minutes. Your time starts now.
Good day, everyone. Team Cadmium is a juristic person which is coming in as an amicus curiae or a friend of the UN corpus under the NSS academic banner to stand in solidarity with the resolution. The international community must establish regulations for space-based solar power, SBSP, to mitigate potential hazards. In this submission, Chair, SBSP is confined to the reference design, which utilizes the unimpeded solar energy. The infrastructure spans about 1 kilometer in diameter in the geocentric orbit. Photovoltaic cells store this energy and transmit it in the form of 2.5 gigahertz microwaves. On the ground, we have the 10-kilometer receiver rectainers, which will then connect to the grid, which supplies us with the much needed clean energy in line with the SDG number 7 of the United Nations. We also explain the meaning of regulations in our application as specific rules or directives established by governmental or intergovernmental authority to regulate or implement and enforce laws passed by the legislature. They provide detailed instructions on how laws should be applied and enforced in specific situations. Literature says regulations are prescriptive, transparent, and prescriptive, with the latter meaning they prescribe a penalty for non-compliance. Therefore, Team Cadmium rightfully interprets regulations as being complementary to the existing laws and consequential because they impose penalties. It is our position that the phrase international community is not a vague phrase because its substantive definition interprets it from the lenses of multilateralism and collective effort, while potential hazards refer to premeditated damages or harm which is associated with the implementation of SBSP in this context. Allow me to now define the issue before you, moderator, which is whether or not the existing legal framework requires complementary regulations. We shall prove to you why it is a must to establish these envisaged regulations. The word must in the resolution proposal statement means that we are imposing an obligatory duty on the international community to act now. Accordingly, our second and third speakers shall deal with the motivations and merits of the impact of the lack of the envisaged regulations, especially on the aspects of radio frequency interference, space debris, geopolitical and economic rationality issues. For now, let me justify why we need regulations from a legal perspective. Firstly, the fulcrum of cosmic jurisprudence revolves upon the Outer Space Treaty, which uses a language that does not impose a duty on state to act. The continued use of word shall in its prescriptions means its applications is merely voluntary and not obligatory. Secondly, UN supporting structural framework, that is the corpus, endorses this position by setting in its guidelines on sustainable use of outer space that the application and participation of states and any other juristic persons on debris, space treaties, and space development is on voluntary basis. Through Article 15 of Outer Space Treaty, we recommend that this application be provisionally accepted as we work on the changing of the word shall to must. We are also saying that after this resolution has been passed, with an enabling proviso, we will attend to the structural issues of governance, which will look into the establishment of a dedicated space courts that will deal with any matters that can arise from these cosmic jurisprudential issues. They will also impose penalties and sentences aided by an international policing structure that will effectively enforce these regulations. A multilateral NATO kind of infrastructure is what we are advocating for. Chair, the expanded definition of the launching states presents a significant challenge in terms of restitution or remedial prescriptions, placing responsibility on the state from those whose jurisdiction an object is launched from, or on the owner of the deployed object, introduces complexity when litigating space-based solar power issues and other space launches. We therefore need a regulation which reconciles this fatigue. Additionally, a regulatory framework which deals with the prevention of launch failure, in-flight collisions, orbital collisions, and end-of-life debris through obligatory instruments is a priority. Thirdly, the lack of an effective international space-related engineering standardization regulatory board which satisfies space launches and which does regular reviews on aerospace engineering activities is a worrying matter. The Columbia incident, which resulted in the loss of our astronauts, is one good example of how spacecraft debris, which peeled off together with the heat sensors, can lead to fatality. Concern about monetary investments in the absence of regulatory laws superseded the right to life of the envoys of mankind in this Columbia case. We therefore make a submission that the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, Moon Treaty, Space Situational Awareness Guidelines, Registry Conventions, Astronaut Treaty to be amended through mutatis mutandis to be legally binding as stipulated and highlighted in Article 15 of the Outer Space Treaty, which provides for amendment in this dynamic orbital development. After making these amendments, we recommend the establishment of an enabling international structural framework which takes precedence over nationalistic laws, the same way that EU law takes precedence over nationalistic law through direct and indirect application of its jurisprudence. It is also encouraging to state that EU intends to launch EU space law after its June election, and this will undoubtedly work as a leading space jurisprudential framework for the envisaged international space law, which is supported by the regulations that we are advocating for, Chair. For the record, our next speakers shall look into the granular space debris topic, radio frequency, economic, and geopolitical issues. In the detained spirit of universalization, I thank you, Chair, for listening to our prayer, which encourages you to provisionally accept our resolution with immediate legally binding clauses as we work on a policing structural framework and the mutatis mutandis or minor changes to the parent laws. This marks the end of our heads. Back to you, Moderator Raj. Thank you.
Thank you, King. Opposition Speaker of Team Silicon, let's hear from you. You have 8 minutes. Your time starts now.
Hello, everyone. Let's remember our resolution for today, which is the international community must establish regulations for space solar energy to mitigate potential risks. A space-based solar power is basically a satellite comprised of solar panels transmitting electric energy from outer space to Earth. It is a clean energy source with an enormous capacity to supply future needs. Well, this project needs creative minds to develop it and make it better. Because if we let this project without a...
Can you just turn your camera because we can't see you? Yep, thank you.
Can I start again?
It's all right, you can go on.
Yeah.
Let's remember our resolution, which is the international community must establish regulations for space solar energy to mitigate potential risks. A space-based solar power is basically a satellite comprised of solar panels transmitting electric energy from outer space to Earth. It is a clean energy source with an enormous capacity to supply future energy needs. Well, this project needs creative minds to develop it and make it better. Because if we left this project without applying creative ideas and technology, it will stay as it is, and its importance will not be seen by people. When we try to implement new ideas to improve the system, then we are opening a wide space for more individuals to participate in improving and developing this project. With the no regulations, we are allowing the unlimited and great ideas to appear and help to develop the system. Because removing rules will increase the competition of creating and implementing the new ideas between individuals and companies as well. In other words, less regulations can lead to more competition, which can motivate innovation as companies strive to differentiate themselves. Competition fuels creativity and drives progress. By eliminating overly restrictive regulations, we can unleash the full potential of the space industry and open up new frontiers of exploration. And this is echoed what said by Stephen Hawking. Exploring space-based solar power requires us to think beyond the confines of traditional energy systems. Innovation and creativity Exploring space-based solar power requires us to think beyond the confines of traditional energy systems. Innovation and creativity are the key to unlocking the immense potential of this technology. Also, rules and regulations will stifle the innovation because they set boundaries and limitations on what can and cannot be done. And it's proved by the American astrophysicist Neil deGrasse, who said, "Regulation stifles innovation." Too often, regulations are an excuse to not try something new. We need to create an environment where innovation can flourish without unnecessary barriers. For example, if someone had an idea to improve the system by using technology like research and develop the necessary technology for capturing solar energy in space and transmitting it to Earth, there might be some struggles because of regulations, like some necessary papers and legal documents, and it will take a lot of time. And talking about technology, it's hard for the regulatory framework to keep pace with technology because the process of creating and implementing regulations typically involves multiple stages, including research stakeholder consultations, drafting, review, and approval. This process can be time-consuming and may not keep pace with the rapid development of new technologies, and it will lead to downgrade the system, the space solar power, and its lack of development with the advancement of technology, and will prevent the application of advanced technology to it. This can make it challenging for individuals to think outside the box and explore new ideas without the fear of breaking the rules, which means that we have broad horizons and a free space to spare creativity. Additionally, the bureaucratic nature of rules and regulations can slow down decision-making processes and make it difficult to implement innovation ideas because of the complex approval process. In other words, regulations involve many levels of approval of decision, which makes dealing with the bureaucratic difficult. Decline, especially when applying modern ideas and technology on space solar power. And I can provide my speech with an evidence by the astronaut and the former commander of ISS, Chris Hadfield, who said bureaucracy in space exploration can lead to missed opportunities and decline, preventing us from capitalizing on breakthroughs and advancements. So the impact is very huge because creativity allows us to view and solve problems more openly and wisely. For example, crises by their nature are unexpected and can severely damage a project and even an entire system. When a crisis hits, managers need to be able to think fast, see multiple options, and make a decision. This requires creativity and a willingness to act on that creativity in an uncertain situation. And as the NSS, National Space Science Association, aerospace engineer Reem Sinan said, innovation in space opens up a wide range of cooperation between states, intergovernmental organizations, space agencies, industry, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, educational institutions, academia, and society. So it will lead to uniting creative ideas among all countries and contributing to the development of the space solar energy project without any obstacles, such as regulations that limit all of this. Besides that, if we look about the future advantages of removing regulations and focusing more about the innovation and creativity when dealing with the space-based solar power, we see that there will be a revolution in clean energy production, offering a virtually limitless and sustainable source of power without greenhouse gas emissions or pollution. Also, with its renewable nature, environmental impact, space-based solar power could play a crucial role in mitigating climate change by reducing carbon emissions and stabilizing the Earth's climate. So can you imagine how removing regulations will affect positively on this system, even in the future? But if we look from the point of view of the affirmative side, that supporting putting regulations...
Sorry for the interruption, but when it's offered PUI, you're supposed to take it right now, at least 2 when they're offered by team. So I think you're supposed to take it right now.
Okay.
So SBSP technologies such as reference design are at higher technology readiness levels. Why do you say technology can be stifled by regulations?
I didn't say that regulations will stifle the technology. No, I mean that we see that we are in the period of time that technology is being very development by the time. So if we put regulations, it will stifle a lot, because when we want to apply technology on this system, it will take a lot of time. And I said that it will be take a lot of time by making a lot of steps before applying this technology to this system, the space-based solar power, like the approval and drafting and other stuff.
Are you done?
Yes, I'm done. May I complete?
Sure. Moving
Okay.
on. Now from proposition team, speaker 2 of team Cadmium. You have 8 minutes. Let's hear it from you.
Perfect. Okay. Are you ready?
You can get
Okay.
started.
Perfect. So everybody's ready. Now I'm going to be talking about the socioeconomic concerns here. So according to an article from Sage Journals in 2012, as well as New Space Economy, there's geopolitical security implications that comes in a world that we don't regulate. So while this system offers the promise of unlimited green electrical power, it also has immense potential to be used as a geopolitical tool. The development and deployment of space-based solar power systems could exacerbate geopolitical tensions, especially if certain countries or regions perceive them as a threat to their security or strategic interests. Competition for access to space resources, control over energy transmission infrastructure, as well as these disputes over frequency allocation could escalate to geopolitical rivalries and increase the risk of conflict. First, we must consider the implications of a country pushing ahead of others in this race. Now, tensions in major spacefaring nations such as the United States, Russia, China continue to increase considering the proliferation of anti-satellite weaponry, which can target or disrupt space-based solar power satellites, ground stations, or power transmission facilities as a result of a broader military strategy and promote conflict. A dominant power will be able to stymie the ambitions of others by occupying the territory and attempting to police it. Its satellites will enjoy a direct line down to geostationary and low Earth orbit. Those who pave the way will set the parameters for others who are expected to follow. Furthermore, major global powers such as the United States and China have already deployed terrestrial-based directed energy weapons and are reported to be working on space-based directed energy weapons. Space-based solar power systems could potentially be used to power terrestrial or space-based directed energy weapons. Fundamentally, the country that achieves a viable space-based solar power network first can potentially reshape our entire global energy market and in turn have much control over our economic activity here on Earth from space, which is exactly why we need to have these regulations in place. Now, let's talk about the economic considerations. First, there's feasibility concerns. Space-based solar power is not cheap technology, and we cannot run the risk of not regulating it and just spend money to spend money. Let's talk about this from a market perspective. Estimates suggest that the development, construction, and deployment of a single space-based solar power satellite could range from several $100 million to several $1 billion. For example, a study by the National Space Society estimated that the initial development and construction costs for a prototype space-based solar power satellite could range from $5 billion to $20 billion, with subsequent production units potentially costing less due to economics of scale and other technological advancement. Another study from the U.S. National Research Council estimated that the total cost of deployment of a network of space-based solar power satellites could range from $500 billion to $1 trillion over several decades. It is important to note that these estimates are speculative and they are subject to uncertainties, including technological readiness, regulatory requirements, and even market considerations. But it's still important to note that we cannot spend this kind of money recklessly without taking the time to properly regulate it. Let's talk about why the potential economic harms that come with not regulating it. Let's talk about this from an investor confidence perspective. According to the Space Direct 2020, orbital debris are hazardous to satellites in orbital space, as collisions with debris can destroy satellites or render them non-operational. Studies suggest that a continuous increase in the quantity of non-functioning human-made objects in space may generate a Kessler effect, which may make some orbits strictly unusable. Despite a common interest among spacefaring nations to limit pollution of Earth's orbit and the adoption of voluntary debris mitigation guidelines, the number of debris objects are increasing. Theoretical research on the economics of orbital debris suggests that the absence of a proper initiative structure, self-interested firms will generate more debris than socially optimal due to a free rider problem, as firms can only really consider themselves to be in a bubble or in a vacuum, and only consider the cost of orbital debris for their own satellites and not the bigger picture. We estimate that the expected economic cost of collisions of satellites with orbital debris, where satellites are valued as a replacement cost here, and this analysis revealed that the expected annual loss is currently between $86 and $103 million year over year, which represents approximately 0.05% of the estimated value of operational satellites, which is from 182 billion to 218 billion in 2020. Obviously, this number is much greater now that we're in 2024. The expected losses are significantly higher, and these losses are continuing to range between $79 and $102 million. So let's take a step back and talk about what this actually means. Not only will we be creating the potential to exacerbate these geopolitical tensions and feed broader geopolitical and military agendas, but we're also saying that it's acceptable to hemorrhage millions of taxpayer dollars to fund technology without regulations, meaning that anybody could do whatever they want, creating the risk for these geopolitical tensions, as well as harming our economy on the way. Side affirmative strictly stands that that is not acceptable in today's debate. Now, let's talk about side opposition's points. First, they create a point about how regulation leads to more competition, decreases competition, and how it's harmful to regulation because it's time-consuming and it harms the advancement of technology. First, this is what my partner addressed in his POI. He questions strictly, what innovation are you harming here? Because all the technology and infrastructure that we need to create these satellites already exist. There's no innovation to be harmed. When he says that readiness levels are already high, he's saying that the technology and the infrastructure is already in place. We're simply transporting it and putting it into orbit. So there's no innovation to harm. So again, that completely negates our entire argument on their end. They say that the tech is already done. And furthermore, from a broader framework perspective, even if you're advocating for progress, even if you're advocating for innovation, we cannot accept a world in which we partner progress and innovation with all these potential harms, because we're not talking about a small venture here. We're talking about the potential to completely reshape the way we utilize energy here on Earth. And as such, this has to be regulated in a way that mitigates the potential economic, geopolitical, and environmental harms that come with careless implementations and strategies in which we're continuing to pollute our atmosphere, harm our economy, and create these tensions. Now, let's talk about how, to the contrary of their point, let's talk about how regulations are actually a great thing to solve for some of the issues they're talking about here. First, regulations level the playing field. They work to prevent monopolies. Regulations are crucial to preventing these monopolistic practices that stifle the innovation. So again, we're pulling that argument to our side because in a world with regulations, we're being more successful in mitigating those hazards, which is what the resolution demands for us to do today. Regulations standardize market entry. They encourage innovation because stimulating these regulatory standards. Except. Okay, so how can the international community ensure equitable access and control over space-based solar power technology, including the potential for geopolitical tensions and the power imbalances? Okay, so I just was about to address this, right? So again, regulations actually level the playing field. They standardize this access. So one, in the current status quo, our current legal framework our current legal framework in our outer space treaty already doesn't reach every nation. So what these regulations are doing is leveling the playing field and ensuring long-term sustainability and growth, because regulations promote these best business practices, promoting this long-term market stability, as well as promoting economic growth for all. And I believe that's my time. But again, we are so proud to affirm today's resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. Opposition 2 from Silicon. Please start your delivery. You're allocated 8 minutes.
Yes. Am I audible?
You are. Go on.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it is becoming more and more clear as we explore the world of space solar energy that removing regulatory barriers is essential to realizing the full potential of this game-changing technology. It is crucial that we strike a careful balance between encouraging innovation and addressing valid concerns through responsible governance as we navigate the complexities of space-based solar power. Space-based solar power has enormous potential to help solve the world's energy needs and environmental issues, but its implementation must not impede the innovation and advancement that characterize cutting-edge technological fields. My teammate made an excellent point regarding space-based solar power, and I'd like to emphasize that by making all of you imagine in which creative and innovative thinking are unrestricted, a society where bold thinkers and fearless business people come together to push the envelope of what is conceivable. Through the removal of bureaucratic obstacles, we stimulate a birth of creativity in space-based solar power technology. Take into consideration the revolutionary advancements achieved by businesses such as SpaceX, which are advancing innovation and lowering costs in the space sector without being constrained by conventional regulations in the space-based solar power space. We have a rare chance to duplicate and magnify this success in the SBSP space, creating a climate that is conducive to competition and groundbreaking discoveries. I disagree with the assertion that regulations give uncertainty to the investors made by the proposition team, because complicated space-based solar power specific rules may erect needless obstacles, resulting in project delays and higher expenses. Long-term investment can be discouraged by regulatory uncertainty brought on by the rapid advancements of technology, particularly for smaller businesses. Strict regulations hurt startups as well by stifling innovation and competition in the space-based sector. While encouraging innovation and competition, a balanced strategy with precise standards and adaptable guidelines is essential for investor confidence. Regulators and stakeholders working together can guarantee efficient, flexible pointers rather than stringent regulations that promote the long-term expansion of space-based solar power. Firstly, technological advancement versus innovation suppression. Regulatory frameworks have the power to support or impede innovation at this pivotal point, particularly in the field of space-based solar power. The rapid integration of advanced space-based solar power technologies is being impeded by protracted approval processes and antiquated safety protocols, which are slowing progress and creating financial. Yes, accept. Okay. How can you argue that regulations stifle innovation and technological advancement when they often drive targeted research, provide investment security, and ensure sustainable development? Like I had mentioned before, regarding investment security, long-term investment can discourage regulatory uncertainty because there are specific needless obstacles which actually remove the project delays, which actually cause project delays and have higher expenses. And it stifles innovation because competition is being stifled. And when competition is being stifled, there is a resultant aspect to it, which is stifling of innovation. I hope I have answered the specific question. And targeted research is basically because of stifling innovation and competition not being there, it stifles innovation. Continuing on, projects such as the Space Sustainable Rating show how innovative practices can be responsibly fostered and sustainable space operations supported by voluntary framework. As we move towards sustainable, infinite clean energy through space-based solar power, it is imperative that we strike a balance between ethical obligations and regulatory efficiency. Secondly, imagine a future in which regulatory barriers to clean energy innovation are removed, unleashing a wave of innovation similar to how deregulated energy markets have fueled the growth of renewable energy on Earth. In the battle against climate change, space-based solar power is a shining example of sustainable energy that is not constrained by geography or sporadic problems as we work towards a global transition to clean energy. Space-based solar power offers a scalable answer, but problems like space debris still exist. Regulations are important, but proactive measures are also demonstrated by industry-driven projects like the Astroscale's debris removal technologies. Cooperation initiatives such as the Clean Space initiatives from ESA demonstrate the industry's dedication to responsibly manage space resources. Incorporating creativity and cooperation into space operations guarantees a sustainable and eco-friendly post-Earth future. Continuing on, there are creative solutions which are needed to address the problem of properly disposal of space-based solar power systems when their useful life is coming to an end. Flexible approaches like an on-orbit servicing and modular designs provide effective end-of-life strategies instead of strict regulatory frameworks. Businesses in leading the way in the development of end-of-life services and active debris removal technologies are companies like Northrop Grumman and Astroscale, illustrating the industry's proactive approach to tackling these issues. We can guarantee space exploration, sustainability, and safety by encouraging stakeholder collaboration and endorsing industry-driven solutions. Since space activities are international in nature,
we are advocating for tax exemption or innovation stimuli packages. Why do you speak about restrictive dimension and not positive aspects that are associated with regulations? Are tax exemption regulations bad?
I feel that since I am from the opposition side, I should be negating regulations. And that is why I'm talking about the negative aspects of it, which are very important to be taken into consideration, as space activities need to be open to innovation and competition so that more and more innovation and technological leaps are possible. So continuing on, space activities are international in nature. Transparent frameworks and diplomatic cooperation are imperative. International cooperation is fostered by initiatives like the Outer Space Treaty and the Artemis Accords, which offer crucial guidelines for resource utilization and peaceful exploration. Through consensus building and voluntary guidelines, collaborative forums such as the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space allow nations to address common challenges like space debris mitigation. We can advance technological advancements in space-based solar energy and other fields by navigating geopolitical complexities by encouraging responsible conduct and common standards. While I respect the opposing viewpoint, it overlooks the crucial fact that given the strong current regulatory frameworks governing space exploration and activities, it is not necessary to establish new regulations specifically for space-based solar power. Contrary to what has been suggested, the evidence actually supports the fact that extensive guidelines covering a variety of aspects of space operations, including safety, environmental protection, and international cooperation, are already provided by organizations like NASA, EAT, and the Moon under the intricacies of space exploration guarantee ethical behavior in orbit. Other regulations existing are the decline. The Rescue Agreement of 1968, which has changed in practice along with advancements in space technology and international cooperation. Even though it has remained unchanged in text, these flexibilities demonstrate that modern problems can be successfully addressed by existing treaties without the need for new legislation. Comparably, the application of the Liability Convention of 1972 has been proved by international practice and case law, guaranteeing its applicability in the current situation. Hence, I strongly believe that our team deserves to win because the revolutionary potential of SBSP can be fully realized without the need for burdensome regulations, as responsible practices can naturally evolve within the industry to balance safety concerns with technological advancements. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. Prop 3 of Team Cadmium now offer the third argument for the proposition team. You have 8 minutes and your time starts now.
So, hello everyone. So, as we explore and expand our activities in outer space, we must consider the challenges and responsibilities that come with it. Today, I want to talk about why we need regulations for space-based activities, focusing on space debris management, radio frequency interference, and the potential environmental hazards that accompany these ventures. These issues are crucial because they affect not only our ability to use space effectively, but also our environment on Earth. First, let's talk about space debris. Space debris includes defunct satellites, sent rocket stages, and fragments from other collisions. Currently, there are over 23,000 objects larger than 10 centimeters being tracked in Earth's orbit, and millions of smaller pieces that are floating around. These bits of debris pose a significant threat to our satellites and spacecraft. A collision with even a tiny piece of debris can cause major damage, and a larger collision could lead to a chain reaction known as the Kessler syndrome, which my teammate Robert carefully discussed about, where debris in Kessler syndrome, debris from one collision causes more collisions, creating even more debris. To prevent this scenario, we need regulations to manage and reduce space debris. This includes rules for safely disposing of old satellites and better tracking systems to monitor debris in orbit. Secondly, let's discuss about radio frequency interference. As more satellites and communication systems are launched into space, the risk of interference with essential signals increases. These signals are vital for navigation, communication, and scientific research. If they are disrupted, it can affect everything from GPS systems to weather forecasting. So, by establishing clear rules on how radio frequencies are used, we can prevent these interferences and ensure that these critical services remain reliable and effective. The next thing that I'm going to discuss are the environmental hazards associated with space activities. The production and launch of rockets involve hazardous materials and the release of pollutants into our atmosphere. Rocket launches emit large amounts of CO2 and other greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change. Additionally, when space debris re-enters Earth's atmosphere, it can cause contamination and environmental damage. To minimize these all impacts, we need regulations that promote sustainable practices like using eco-friendly propellants and ensuring the safe disposal of old satellites. The challenges that are posed by space debris, they serve us as a reminder that we need regulations that cover all of our aspects in space. Consider the case of space SBSP. It is a technology which has the potential to revolutionize renewable energy. While it offers a clean and abundant source of power, its deployment in space, it has so many risks, including creation of additional space debris, which is already a huge issue, and the potential for radio frequency interference with other space activities. To address these risks and increase the benefits of SBSP, we need strict regulations that sets clear guidelines for spacecraft design, deployment, and end-of-life disposal. These regulations must be based on scientific evidence and crafted through international collaboration to which everyone agrees to. They should be enforced with transparency and accountability. So, by establishing a robust regulatory framework for SBSP, we can ensure that this transformative technology is carried out safely and sustainably with responsibility. But why should we focus only on SBSP? Why should we specifically focus on regulations for SBSP? The answer lies in the interconnected nature of our activities in space. All the fields that are related to space are interconnected in nature. And while SBSP offers a promising solution to our energy needs, it relies on radio frequency transmission for power beaming. This activity can potentially interfere with other space activities if not properly regulated. So it can have dire consequences. By implementing regulations that ensure the responsible deployment and operation of SBSP system, we can reduce the risk of radio frequency interference and safeguard our space-based communication infrastructure. These regulations must strike a perfect balance between fostering innovation and protecting the interest of all, ensuring that the benefits of SBSP are realized without compromising the safety and sustainability of space-based activities. So in conclusion, the challenges of space debris management, radio frequency interference, and SBSP regulation are interconnected. They demand a coordinated and proactive response from the global community. By enacting regulations that promote responsible space activities, we can pave the way for a future where humanity explores the cosmos with wisdom and foresight. And as they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, coming to the point of the opposition, they mentioned about how obstacles may arise due to regulation and how it may stifle innovation. But this thing, it cannot be used as a leverage against the safety of our people and our planet. There can be disastrous consequences if a technology as powerful as SBSP is left at the mercy of private companies. We need these regulations to reduce any chances of accidents and to regulate them and to keep them in check. Many accidents are bound to happen, as history has been, as we can see according to history. When such powerful technologies are left at the independence of the private companies and of the investors, many things can happen. So there should be there should be some rules and there should be some regulations that keep them in check and keep them in control and avoid any such accidents that may come with it. And as I told you, as I discussed, SBSP, while it can be a very good technology, it has huge risks that can lead to consequences if not consumed properly and responsibly. Thank you.
Are you done, Pranav?
Yep. I'm done.
Would you like to take a POI?
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. How might existing regulatory frameworks governing space exploration and activities be inadequate for providing a sufficient guidance to SBSP and projects without the need for imposing additional regulations? Okay, so the existing regulatory frameworks governing space exploration and activities, there are many loopholes and flaws that can be said about in that. For example, the Outer Space Treaty or the Moon Treaty, none of them is perfect and none of them covers SBSP, and it doesn't regulate SBSP in a way that it should be regulated. And also SBSP is a infant technology. It will develop very fast. So the old regulations might not be enough to keep that growing technology in check. We have to come up with, we will have to change the old regulations again and again, which are already not enough to keep this technology in check. The regulations have many loopholes which can be used by private companies as well as powerful countries to their own advantage. So we need new regulations that can keep this in check.
Thank you, Pranav.
Thank you.
Opposition 3 of Silicon, now offer your third argument for opposition 3. You have 8 minutes.
Continuing from my team sides, advocating against the motion that the international community must establish regulation for space-based solar power to mitigate potential hazards, while the proponents of this motion may argue for the necessity of regulations to address potential risks associated with space-based solar power, are content that such regulations could stop innovation, hinder progress, and create unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles. First and foremost, let us acknowledge that space-based solar power represents a groundbreaking technology advancement with the potential to revolutionize our energy landscape. By harnessing the virtual unlimited power of the sun from space, we have the opportunity to address pressing energy challenges on Earth and mitigate the impacts of climate change. However, imposing burdensome regulations could stifle the development and deployment of this transformative technology. Furthermore, it is important to recognize that existing regulatory frameworks governing space activities are already robust and comprehensive. Organizations such as NASA and the International Astronautical Federation have established guidelines and protocols to ensure the safe and responsible use of space resources. Adding additional layers of regulation specific to space-based solar power could create confusion and redundancy within the regulatory landscape. And let's not forget the practical challenges of enforcing regulations in space. It's not like that we can just send a team of inspectors up there to check that everyone is following the rules. Monitoring and enforcing regulation in space would be incredibly difficult and could end up being more trouble than it's worth. Moreover, the imposing of regulations could have unintended consequences, stopping innovations and decreasing investment in space-based solar power projects. A study conducted by the Space Innovation Institute found that overly stringent regulations in the space industry can lead to decreased investment, stifle innovations, and slow technological progress. For instance, strict licensing requirements and bureaucratic red tape have deterred many private companies from entering the market and investing in research and development initiatives. This implies that overly restrictive regulations may impede progress in addressing space hazards while limiting the potential benefits of space-based solar power. The space industry is characterized by rapid technological advancement and entrepreneurship spirit, driven by the promise of new discoveries and commercial opportunities. Imposing strong regulations could discourage this spirit of innovations, leading to missed opportunities for progress and growth. Additionally, it is essential to consider the practical challenges associated with applying regulations in the vast and complex realm of outer space. Unlike terrestrial regulations that can be enforced by national authorities, regulating activities in space requires international cooperation and coordinations. The logistical challenges of monitoring and enforcing regulation in space could outweigh any potential benefits.
POI. Are you taking it?
Guidelines are not legally binding. Why do you say we already have robust laws? What is the difference between guidelines, laws, and regulations? I'm taking it. So there is difference between
uh,
guidelines.
Excuse me, Naveen, no POIs can be offered now, except for there was a misstep with the last reply. Naveen, the moderator should be reading the POI, please. Naveen,
Sure.
if you read it, thank you.
So should I continue?
I'll
Are
read
you
it once.
agree? Naveen, I'll let you handle this.
Guidelines are
Should I
not
continue?
legally binding. Why do you say we already have robust laws? What is the difference between guidelines, laws, and regulation?
Okay. So guidelines, laws, and regulations. Guidelines is meant to be that every companies need to follow. It's not that it is too much pressure on that. Guidelines need to be very basic so that every companies, every agency, every research organizations, every space agencies could follow. Laws and regulations. Regulations is something that is very strong, that you have to follow them, because regulations is something that which is very different from guidelines. Regulations is something that you need to follow and will work in those regulations. I think I answered this question. I'm continuing. So the logistically challenges of monitoring and enforcing regulations in space could outweigh any potential benefits. Now, there is a question from the opponent side. There is about that putting regulations. Without regulations, there is so much space debris in outer space. So for it, I have that in UNSO, from a research of UNSO, stringent regulations may exhibit innovation in space technology by imposing standardized requirements that leave little room for experimentations and advancement. Research published in the Advances in Research Space Research Journal discusses the potential impact of regulatory constraints on the development of novel space debris mitigation strategies, suggesting that overly prescriptive regulation could stifle creative and progress in this field. Now, the opponents also talk about regulations. Regulations need for frequency modulation. So I have from my side that regulations for SBSP could potentially impact frequency modulation if they restrict or allocate radio frequency spectrum in a way that conflicts with existing or future communication system. Frequency interference could disrupt communication networks, include satellite communication, navigation systems, and terrestrial wireless networks. Regulations can mitigate this risk by harmonizing spectrum allocations for SBSP with existing international agreement and standards, such as those established by the International Telecommunication Union. Clearly, guidelines for spectrum usage and coordination mechanism can help minimize interference and ensure the compatibility of SBSP system with other radio frequency dependent technologies. SBSP operators can implement technical solutions to mitigate frequency bands allocated, especially for space-based applications, or coordinating frequency usage with other stakeholders to minimize conflict. The opponents also said about everything like developed countries, USA, China, and what is in it, but they did not talk about the developing countries. If we put regulations, what will happen with the developing countries? So there is a lot of hurdles developing countries could face. Like, I'm from India, and the first is cost attendance. Cost attendance. Implementing and maintaining stringent safety regulations can significantly increase the overall cost of space missions and projects. This financial burden may limit the feasibility of certain endeavors, especially for organizations with limited resources. Compliance challenges and adhering to complex safety standards may pose challenges for spacecraft manufacturers and operators, particularly similar companies or startups with limited experience or resources. Ensuring compliance with regulations could require significant time, effort, or investment. In conclusion, while the proponents of regulation for space-based solar power may have noble intention, I urge you to consider the broader implications of such measures. Instead of imposing burdensome regulations, let us foster an environment of innovation and collaboration where stakeholders can work together to address potential risks while maximizing the benefits of space-based solar power. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's hear from opposition. Speaker 1 or 2 from Team Silicon in 4 minutes for opposition reply. Opposition team. Speaker 1 or 2 of Team Silicon should be giving their 4-minute opposition reply.
For our speaker 1, I think there is some problem network issue. So she is not able to turn on her mic or camera.
I'll be giving the reply speech now, as she's not able to. So, we stand firmly in opposition to the resolution that the international community must establish new regulations for space-based solar power to mitigate potential risks. Our position is clear. Existing regulatory frameworks are robust and adaptable enough to guide space-based solar power projects without the need for additional regulations. Allow me to elucidate our stance with compelling arguments that highlight the adequacy of current frameworks and the potential pitfalls of introducing new regulations. Firstly, we must recognize the strength and adaptability of existing space treaties and agreements. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967, a cornerstone of international space law, already provides comprehensive guidelines for space activities, including principles for peaceful use, non-appropriation, and benefit of all humankind. This treaty, continuously interpreted and expanded by the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, is well suited to address the challenges posed by space-based solar power, such as space debris and resource utilization. Moreover, the Rescue Agreement of 1968, the Liability Convention of 1972, and the Registration Convention of 1976 collectively ensure astronaut safety, liability for damages, and transparency in space activities. These agreements have evolved in practice, incorporating advancements in space technology and international cooperation. This evolution demonstrates that our current framework can adapt to emerging technologies like space-based solar power without necessitating new regulations. Consider the International Telecommunication Union regulations, which are regularly updated to address new technologies and frequency allocations. These updates occur every 3 to 4 years, keeping pace with rapid advancements in telecommunications and satellite operations. This dynamic regulatory approach ensures that ITU regulations remain relevant and effective, providing a model for how space-based solar power projects can be managed under existing frameworks. We must also acknowledge the space debris mitigation guidelines established by the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee. These guidelines have been periodically reviewed and adopted by the United Nations through COPUS, with national space agencies regularly revising their debris mitigation standards. This proactive approach to space debris demonstrates the capability of current guidelines to address the safety and sustainability concerns of space-based solar power. National regulations further bolster our agreement. The United Nations, through the Federal Aviation Administration, updates its commercial space launch and re-entry regulations periodically to accommodate new industry practices and safety standards. Similarly, the European Space Agency and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency continually revise their regulations to support evolving space activities. These national efforts show that existing regulatory bodies are responsive and capable of integrating space-based solar power into their frameworks. Now, let's address the concerns that about stifling innovation. Excessive and overly prescriptive regulations can create barriers that hinder the rapid development and deployment of space-based solar power technologies. Innovators need flexibility to experiment, iterate, and adapt new findings. Overregulations can divert resources away from research and development, leading to delays, increased costs, ultimately stifling progress. Furthermore, new regulations could exacerbate geopolitical tensions and power imbalances. If certain countries are favored by stringent regulations, it could lead to inequitable access and control over space-based solar power technology, undermining international cooperation and fairness. Existing frameworks which already emphasize international collaboration and equitable benefits are better suited to managing these geopolitical dynamics. In conclusion, the international community does not need to impose additional regulations for space-based solar power. By leveraging and adapting our existing robust regulatory frameworks, we can ensure the safety, sustainable, and innovative development of space-based solar power technologies. Let us focus on enhancing and refining what we have rather than creating new barriers that could impede progress and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. Let's now hear from Team Cadmium proposition reply. From proposition speaker 1 or 2, you are allotted 4 minutes.
Amazing. So let's get started. Let's first talk about addressing some of my opponent's points here. Speaker 1 talks about how regulations suffocate creativity and lead to bureaucracy. We argue that these regulations we're proposing streamline the lead times that shall enact as creativity enablers through the application of tax exemptions for startups. So in the affirmative world, we promote creativity by reducing the cost burden on startups. Regulations can actually stimulate creativity by promoting a structured framework within which businesses can operate and innovate. For example, regulations can set a clear environmental standards or safety requirements that inspire companies to develop innovative solutions that comply with these standards while also meeting consumer needs. Furthermore, regulations can encourage creativity by fostering collaboration and knowledge sharing amongst industry players, mending global tensions, and utilizing regulations as a driver of creativity and cross-collaboration. Now let's talk about what their speaker 2 says. They basically state that this point about bureaucracy and how bureaucracy counters regulations that streamline this bureaucracy. They speak about how existing laws are good enough, such as a liability convention. Our counter to this is that the liability convention and the outer space treaty application is on a voluntary basis and not a mandatory basis. That's why with our first submission, we spoke to you about why we need to make these treaty changes mandatory, a point that goes uncontested by my opponents throughout this entire debate. Having the word must in these treaties will solve for the only harms my opponent has on their side of the table. Thus, our argument outweighs on this point. Lastly, their speaker 3 talks about the guidelines and why these guidelines need to be established. First, these guidelines are not legally binding. These guidelines are about space debris and how regulations are needed. They're not legally binding. We need solid infrastructure and a legal framework to carry out this new exciting venture that is space development. So let's talk about some of the more specific substantive harms that they say. Let's talk about their point on space debris, which is why this is not adequately contested by my opponent. A world without regulation would be ill-equipped to effectively address this space debris problem due to a lack of enforceable standards and mechanisms for holding spacefaring entities accountable. This absence of accountability increases the risk of collisions and the creation of more debris. There will be no requirements for implementing collision avoidance measures or deorbiting protocols. Furthermore, regulations provide incentives for responsible behavior, facilitate international cooperation, and address environmental and safety concerns. Now, let's address the assertion that regulations harm market competition. Regulations are essential to fostering fair and healthy competition in the market. By establishing clear rules and standards, regulations can enforce that market participants operate on a level playing field, preventing unfair advantages that could stifle the competition. So again, taking their argument and pulling it over to our side of today's debate. For instance, regulations that promote transparency and prevent anti-competitive practices such as price fixing or monopolistic behavior are safeguarded in a world with regulations. So let's recap the affirmative case and why we've more than won today's debate. Let's talk about our first contention again. We give to you why regulations need to be supplementary to our existing laws. Again, a point that goes uncontested by my opponent. We need to actually establish a legal precedent and legal framework that's going to protect us and protect our future. And our second argument, we give you the socioeconomic considerations that cause these harms. We tell you how recklessly adding to our space debris problem, which is the world in which they're advocating for, these orbital debris are hazardous and how this only gets exacerbated. We give to you the figures. We tell you how we're bleeding literally between 86 and $103 million year over year. So are we accepting a world in which we're willing to bleed that type of capital investment just because we don't want regulation? I think not. And lastly, in our third contention, we give you the environmental considerations. So in today's resolution, we are tasked with mitigating harms. And we have more than proven to you that with these tangible, punitive, and distinctive harms that only exist on my opponent's side of today's debate are not properly addressed, and they only get solved for on the affirmative side of today's debate. So the affirmative side does a much better job at addressing the harms of the negation, which is what the resolution demands of us today. And for this reason, we are so proud to affirm today's resolution, and we strongly urge you to
Thank you, Robert. You're done with your time. Great job, everybody. Judge Shreya, would you like to take a couple of minutes before you offer us feedback on the winning team?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll take a few minutes.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, is everyone here?
Yes, Judge. Please can you give us your feedback on the winning team? You have about 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to quickly first introduce myself, and then we're going to go through kind of like an overview of the entire round, and I'll make my decision at the end. Hi, everyone. My name is Shreya Shivetson. I am a student at the University of Michigan, and I'm from Dallas. Been doing a lot of research into this area, so I have a lot of familiarity with what you're speaking about, and I think everyone did a really good job. This was a really good round, and I'm really proud of everyone for speaking today. So I'm going to quickly give like an overview of my thoughts of the round. Okay, so starting with the first speech and the first like pro speaker, I really like the great like visualization at the beginning with and also that you provided like a definition debate. I think it's really important, especially when you brought up the international community definition and how regulations like should be needed in terms of radio frequency and then space debris, and how you listed the 3 points. It made it very clear for me to flow down, and I think that speech was really well done, especially when you were talking about like the difference between voluntary versus obligatory, and then also bringing up the frameworks, and then like what the world would look like if the provisional aspect would be like accepted. So well done there. Moving on to I think let's see. Okay, so the second speech, I think this is the first next speaker. When it was brought up about like I think the example about SpaceX not being constrained by legalities was a really interesting point, especially when you brought up like the project delays and expenses, and then also rapid innovation. I would have liked to see more numbers with that, especially because of the fact that like to bring that impact in terms of like tech advancement and how like it's so reliant on space-based technology, and how we need like creative solutions. I would have liked to see more numbers along with that and like more like facts to support that like statement. And then I really liked how you brought up like navigating geopolitical conflicts, but I would have liked to see more of that, especially because when you're talking about geopolitical like conflicts, give me examples about like, okay, well, how would certain countries respond to like these regulations? For example, with the like OST, for example, like how would you get all these countries on board? Like talk about kind of what has happened in the past and like how that would impact the future of these policies, because not all countries see the same, right? Especially like if you're looking at, for example, I don't know, like the United States and like China, very opposite ways of thinking, very opposite like policy perspectives. So how does that impact these like the creative solutions that you're bringing up? So I didn't see much of that, and I would have liked to see more of that. And then I'm gonna move on to the next speech about like the environmental hazards and then the safe disposal, like eco-friendly option. So you bring this up, but then I don't see like the exact examples. I think both sides bring up this SBSP thing pretty confidently, but again, I don't see exactly how that ties in. It becomes more of a debate about whether, there is a lot of regulation versus whether they shouldn't be. And then there's also like a separate kind of sub debate about this SBSP thing. And I'm not seeing how both of them bridge together as well as I would like to. Especially when you're bringing up like regulation and then the opposition, you mentioned like it can't be used something as, I don't know what that point was about, like how they can't use it as a leverage point. So it's kind of confused with that just a little bit, especially when you bring up the powerful technology and how like many things could happen, huge risks. So what are those huge risks and how do these countries respond to these huge risks? I know it's a lot to like bring up in a debate, especially when you have a very short speaking time, but if I could hear maybe like 1 or 2 points just very briefly about that, it would be very helpful, especially when you're bringing up the loopholes and the flaws and how it's not regulated, because that's a huge debate in the real like space policy world. We have a lot of professionals who are talking about, well, are these policies, do we need to like update the OST? But then some people are also saying, well, it's kind of like, I'm just gonna relate it back to like how I was taught, but like, it's kind of like the US Constitution, like it's there, but then are we updating the Constitution every year? No, we're not. So this whole debate about that is very much real. And I think both sides brought that up in a very like positive way. But again, like I wish I saw more of that. Like if you're bringing up like loopholes and flaws and pinpoint where exactly are the flaws, where exactly are the loopholes. And I think you guys did that decently well, but also like I didn't see specific examples related back to the countries and geopolitical issues. So that's where my problem is. Moving on to the next speech, I think it was Boshra, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not great with names, but the solar powered satellites and the SBSP thing again. So this was brought up again suddenly in the debate, and I'm kind of confused on how it fits back into the regulation because it's not very clear. You bring up like multiple stages, but then with the less regulation, like how exactly are the obstacles like limiting that regulation, if that makes any sense? And then when you bring up multiple stages and multiple options, what are those stages? What are those options? So then I'm going to move on to, I think it was Robert's speech about geopolitical concerns. Goes back to my previous point about how like, I mean like some specific examples about that. But I really like the frequency allocation point. I mean, it's a really significant point. I think it's a very real point considering, again, it's like people who are doing this full time, like they're talking about that, they're talking about like what the frequency allocation like policies look like. You're bringing up geopolitical issues. What about reconnaissance satellites? Like putting more things and using more examples like that would definitely help. And then you also brought up like tensions with like anti-regulate. Hold on. No, that was a different speech. My bad. You also brought up like the dominant power policing thing. So in this case, like maybe talk about the power balance between different countries, right? Like for example, the United States, very huge hedge. Like we have we're basically regarded as this like really prominent country when it comes to like the space race and things like that. So maybe like bring more about that into the debate. I liked how you brought up the US-China relations. I think that's very significant and very important. That's exactly what I was talking about with the geopolitical issues. And then the investor perspective, this is kind of new, but I wish I saw that a little bit earlier, like in the first speech or like the first like earlier speeches, when you're listing the points of what you're going to be talking about, because I mean that's a really good point right there. Moving on to, I think it was Vipasha's speech, like you bring up the existing framework, but like I don't think there's a lot on the logistical challenges. I don't think the NEC really has like a super clear idea of the existing policies. Again, this goes back to the call to like reevaluate the policies, and then also talking about like basically weighing them for me, because as a judge, I think my role in this debate is to simply like see obviously like who's arguing what and also weighing that, right? But then if you were to weigh that for me, it would be helpful to clear that perspective up. And so I think the impact debate in this round was kind of weak from both sides, because it was really redundant on some points, and I didn't see how they meshed well. So I think that's a point of improvement for both sides. And then I also wanted to bring up the historical references for deregulation to areas that make the impact debate bigger. So when I'm saying that, especially for the neg, talk about how deregulation in the past has basically challenged the status quo to make the debate bigger, right? So that you can show me, hey, it's not just space, it's impacting other sectors. And we're able to see how other sectors it's like a feedback loop, if that makes any sense, right? Like whenever the space industry is impacted by these policies, it also impacts other industries. So if you give me a larger scale debate, it gives me more incentive to vote. And I think that was kind of something that I was a little frustrated with the debate, because I'm like, okay, well, you're telling me all these points, but you're not tying it back. And then lastly, with Vishnu, like telecommunication point was brought up late in the debate. I really like that point. I think the debris mitigation standards and the overregulation points were really interesting, especially how you tied that back to overregulation and the telecommunication point. But again, I didn't see a lot of that, and I wish I saw that earlier in the debate. So your role would have just been like, hey, this is just summarizing the impacts again. And yeah, just bring up have like another partner bring up the telecommunication point, because I think it's a very strong aspect, but it wasn't like tapped into enough in the debate. And then the last pro speaker would have loved to hear more about like the reconnaissance satellites point again. Bring it back into like greater impact debates like war, for example, right? Especially how like other countries, when different nations don't have like the same perspective, especially with like current geopolitical issues, how does that tie back to this, right? Give me the bigger picture. So with that said, I think that this debate most of the debates with this topic pretty much lie like pro heavy, but the NEC didn't give me enough substantive like evidence and argumentation for the greater impact. So I vote pro in this round, but everyone did a really good job and I'm very impressed. So really good points from everyone.
Thank you, Judge Shreya and debaters. Great. Excellent job, everyone. Thank you for participating in 2024 SPUN debate tournament for university. Watch your emails to see when and the position you will be representing in your team in the continuing debates. The SPUN debate program will not be possible without the student debaters, coaches, hosts, moderators, judges. Many thanks. Goodbye.